Hi guys, welcome back to the CS Classroom. What we're going to do today is learn how to build an application like this using a new library. It's called ttkbootstrap, and it's basically Tkinter, but with themes resembling a library called Bootstrap, which is largely used in web development. But those themes have been brought to Tkinter applications, which is awesome because generally Tkinter applications don't look so nice. But here you've got a lot of options to create really pretty applications like this using your existing knowledge of Tkinter. So how this is going to work is we're going to start out with a super simple application right here. We just click an open button and then you just get a little pop-up. Just kind of give you an idea of how it works at a really basic level. And then we're going to get into actually building this application. Now, I've actually executed this application in REPL-IT because for some reason my Mac, and I'm pretty sure it's my Mac specifically because this works on Windows, on other Mac operating systems, and on Linux systems. I can't display this table right here. I can display this on my Mac, but not this. So we're going to work on this on my computer and then switch to REPL-IT in order to display the table. Now what this is going to do is we're going to be able to type in some information, student ID, course name. This has some validation as well. So like if I put a symbol in here, this turns red right here. And then I can change my final score using this handy widget. The idea is this is supposed to be a gradebook. So you put in a name, student ID, and course name. And then as well as the final score for the student, you submit it. And then it shows, you get this little toast message, toast notification. And then it shows up in this table right here, all in the same application. So let's go ahead and let's get started. First with our really basic example right here. So what we're going to do is, before we do anything else, we want to actually use this command. So pip install ttkbootstrap. And that'll install Tkinter and the actual, let me just close this up right here. So that'll install Tkinter and the actual Bootstrap, ttkbootstrap library with all the theming. So we just do pip install ttkbootstrap. And it's already been installed on my computer, but that's basically how it would work. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and import ttkbootstrap as ttk. And then we're going to say from ttkbootstrap.constants import all of them with a star. That'll kind of help us with a lot of our styling. Now in this application right here, it's really, really simple. I'm just creating two buttons. Before I do that, I'm going to create this window. So the top level, not the top level, but the main window right here. I'm going to do root equals ttk.window, theme name equals dark blue. Now the cool thing with this is you can use some ttkbootstrap functionality, so you can create widgets using a syntax specific to ttkbootstrap, or you can just use your regular Tkinter syntax, and this library will style everything for you if you use ttk dot whatever. Okay, so we're just going to say open button, just create our open button equals ttk.button root for our main application, text equals open, command equals open dialog for an open dialog function. And then this one is really actually TTK bootstrap specific. We're going to say boot style equals, well, let's just say info for now. Or let's say success. So that means that if we go to the documentation right here, we've got different types of buttons, and we're just specifying that this is going to be a success button. And all of this can be found in the style guide, the handy style guide right here. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to say open button dot pack side equals left. So basically pushing it, aligning it on the left side with a padding in the x direction of 5, which isn't much, and a padding in the y direction of 10. So like so. I'm just going to copy this real quick right here. And I'm going to create another button. We're going to call that exit button. Text is going to be exit. We're not really going to have anything open up. It's just going to exit for us. And then we'll just say boot style. We'll just say info. We're going to say info and then outline. So fitting two qualities to it. So we're going to have side, and then we're going to say side equals left, pad x 5, pad y 10, just as we did before. We're going to change this to exit button. So we'll have def open dialog. That's going to be our function. It's going to be triggered when we click on the open button right here. And then we're going to just say app equals ttk dot top level, which you should have seen before if you worked with Tkinter. And then we'll just say my top level app.main loop, which is just going to run this top level window as soon as we hit the open dialog function, and then root.main loop. So a lot of this is very typical Tkinter sort of syntax, except for this right here. And with our use of TTK and importing TTK Bootstrap instead of Tkinter. Also right here, notice when we created, when you did ttk.window, we specified theme name equals darkly. So that kind of gives us this darkish theme right here, okay? So if we go back to the documentation, we go to themes, then we go to light or dark themes. You can find some different theme names, so like Flatly or Journal or Litera, which I think is actually the default that you can specify right in here, as well as dark themes, which are right here. So Solar, Superhero, Darkly, which is one we chose. And I'm pretty sure this one right here is actually, I think it's Superhero that I chose right there. And you can also create your own themes as well, if that's something you want to do. And there's like a bunch of instructions here in the documentation on how to do that. So we're specifying that theme name right here. And we'll just run this because just so we can see it work, and if there are any errors, we can fix them. Just click open, and we just see this empty window. So that was actually just a really simple example. What we're going to do now is look at a dramatically more complex example, like this one right here. And we're going to start building this on my Mac. One thing to keep in mind is that, again, a lot of the syntax will be similar to Tkinter. So if you don't really know how Tkinter works, I'd recommend that you go back and watch my playlist on like Intro to Tkinter. I'll link in the description because I'm not really going to be focusing so much on how Tkinter works, but more on the Bootstrap, the TTK Bootstrap related syntax, and our TTK Bootstrap specific UI elements, and just sort of any quirks related to the library rather than Tkinter itself. So what we're looking to build is going to be this application right here. I'll just go ahead and expand this for now. I'm going to close this up. So we're going to want 4 fields. We're going to want a table right here. We're going to want a submit and cancel button, and we're going to have a meter widget right here that doesn't exist in Tkinter, but is specific to TTK Bootstrap. So we're going to start by doing import TTK Bootstrap as TTK, and then from TTK Bootstrap constants, import stars, just so we have access to all of those constants. We're going to use toast notification. So if you remember right here when we submit, we have this little thing right here, which is a toast notification. And we're going to import that specific library from TTK Bootstrap. I'm going to say .toast import Tableview. And we're also going to do some validation, or sorry, that's going to be toast notification. We're going to import the library for our Tableview. So that's this one right here. And again, like I said, that's probably, I'm going to create this table last because it's the one thing that won't work on my Mac. So I'm going to say from TTK Bootstrap dot Tableview, import Tableview. This is like a tree view in Tkinter, but obviously it looks much better and is more sophisticated. Dot validation, import add regex. So this is actually going to allow us to validate according to certain criteria as defined by regular expressions. And that's how, for example, right here, if I type in like a symbol instead of a number or a letter, that's number actually. So if I type in this, that turns red because we're not allowed to have a symbol for our student ID. So that's a convenient form of validation. And again, much easier to execute in ttkbootstrap than just in vanilla Tkinter. So the way we're going to do this actually is we're going to use a class-based structure. So I'm going to start by saying this, which basically gives Python instructions on how to execute this file. So when example2 runs, we're going to go right here, execute this code. We're going to say app equals ttk.window. Capitalize that actually. Then we're going to say Gradebook because that's going to be the name of the application. Followed by superhero, which will be the theme. And then resizable. For now, we're not going to worry too much about trying to resize this, so we're just going to make that false. It's just going to be as big as it's going to be. And then we're going to create an object called Gradebook. And then we're going to run all of that. App is going to be a parameter that we're going to put into Gradebook in order to create the object. And then we're going to do app.main loop in order to execute everything. Which, yeah, in example 1 as well, we use root.main loop right here. So our task is going to be to create this Gradebook class, which will basically generate our application. And if you don't know about, or if you don't understand classes and objects, I'll also link a tutorial to classes and objects in the description. It's kind of essential for this tutorial, but also just in general, once you start building larger Tkinter applications, if you don't use classes and objects, and you just write your code procedurally, it can get really complicated, in fact, too complicated really quick. So it's something that I recommend that you understand, and I will explain how and why I use it in this tutorial. So let's get started. We're going to say class Gradebook ttk.frame. So that means that this Gradebook object that we're going to create is going to actually be a frame, which a frame is something you see in Tkinter. It's basically just going to be a container for a bunch of UI. And our Gradebook is going to be a frame, but with some additional attributes. Those attributes being our different inputs and all the functionality that goes along with that. So fundamentally, we're starting with a frame from Tkinter. We're inheriting that, and we're actually initializing that. We're going to say super, referring to the frame, .init. Well, actually, we're going to create our initializer function. Say def init self master window, and that master window is actually referring to this app object right here. That's what we're putting into Gradebook in order to symbolize our master window, which is just our main window that will hold this frame, that will hold this frame and everything in it. So this is our main window, our master window. And then we're going to say super. Super is referring to the frame, .init, master window. And we'll specify some padding. So we'll say padding equals 2010. It's not a big deal, it just makes it look a bit neater. Again, if you don't understand the padding or the margins, I'm not going to explain it too much. It's just something that's related to the appearance. Basically, this spacing right here, and it's not really that important for the tutorial. So basically, right here, we're initializing this frame. So we're giving it some qualities, and we're creating that frame so we can use it. We're going to say self. So from now on, self is referring to the object that we're using. So basically our application. basically not necessarily our application, but basically this entire frame, all of our UI right here. So it's referring to the object or the frame that represents that. So we're going to say self.pack fill equals both. So fill from both sides, and expand equals yes, allowing our elements to expand, basically allowing the window to expand for our elements to fit in there. And this is how we're going to basically show the positions or organize our elements within this frame. So right here, we're basically adding some instructions on how things are positioned inside our main layout or inside our frame. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create some strings that are going to represent the values that have been entered into these inputs right here. I'm going to do this because these are kind of fundamental and they're going to play a large part in our application. So I'm going to say self.studentName equals ttk.string var. Value equals, just initializing them. And these are attached to our class so that we can use these throughout our frame or throughout our layout. I've got self.courseName. I've got actually I should make that student ID probably. Well, let's make this name, I think. That just seems a bit simpler. Student ID, which is going to be alphanumeric, just going to be a string. This is going to be course name. And then we're going to have final score, so the student's final score in the course, which is going to be double var. So a double variable, a floating point, and that's going to be initialized to 0. We're also going to create an array called self.data, or basically just data. That's going to hold the contents that are going to be placed in this table. And then we're going to specify, we're going to say self.colors equals master window.style.colors, just so we have something that's holding all of the data on the colors that are going to be used in our user interface. So these are really fundamental. These are going to hold all the data that's going to be used in our application. So right here, when we click the submit button, all of this data is going to be stored in these variables, and then that's going to be put into an array, which is going to be what's displayed in this table right here. So now that we've done that, we have a lot of work to do, but I'm going to, before we get started writing the whole application, I'm going to create some of the functions that we're going to write for our class. And that should give you an idea of like how this is going to be organized. So I'll be writing a function called, I'm just going to create the function definition without actually writing the functions themselves. So this is going to be a function called createFormEntry. And it's going to have an input of label and variable. And this function is going to be involved in actually creating these entry widgets and their labels, and then storing their data in these variables. Well, not actually, the storage isn't going to happen here. It's just going to create these UI elements right here and connect them to these. So let's say create inputs, create text / numerical inputs. Next, we will be creating a function called def create button box. And what that's going to be responsible for is that's going to be responsible for creating this right here. So the submit button and then this cancel button and all of the functionality associated with that. Actually, probably right after createFormEntry, just to kind of go along with the way this application is organized. I'm going to have a function called createMeter. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to create this meter right here and attach whatever value is selected in this widget to our final score input. create meter, create buttons. And we're going to have, so under the button box, I'm going to create a function called def on submit. And what that's going to do is this is going to be the function that is triggered when the user clicks the submit button right here. Then I'm going to create def on cancel. And that's going to be what's triggered when the user clicks the cancel button. And then finally, we're going to have def create table, which is going to be the last function that we fill in. And that's going to be responsible for creating this table and also populating it with data that's been submitted right here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do actually is when this object is initialized, I'm going to create this instruction text right here. So I'm going to say instruction text equals please enter and then we're going to create an instruction label. So let's say ttkbootstrap.label self-referring to our frame. Text equals instruction text, which we just specified. And then width, which is going to equal 50. And I'm going to position that. I'm going to say instruction.pack fill equals x and pad y equals 10. Just appearance related stuff. So that's going to take care of my instruction text right here. Next, what I'm going to do is I want to create form entries that correspond to all of these. So I'm going to use this create form entry function right here. And I think that before I actually write that, which is again would be in this initializer function because that's going to be created when we start up the application, I'm going to create the create form entry form. And in reality, this is not so different from how you do it in vanilla Tkinter. We're going to say form field container equals ttk.frame self. So that means that each line right here is going to be a frame, or each label and form input. Again, some positioning, form field container.pack fill equals x, expand equals yes, just give it some room to breathe, and then pad y equals 5, which is just putting 5 pixels vertically between the fields and the label. Form field label equals ttk label. I think I could just actually copy this. That should actually be capitalized right there. Text is going to be label, which we're inputting into the function. And the width of that's actually probably going to be smaller. It's going to be 15 because you don't have as much text. Again, we're going to say form field. Let's copy that. Form field.pack. Form field label.pack. Side equals left. Pad x equals 5. Or rather, pad x equals 12. So really giving it some space right there. And that's going to be aligned on the left side. And next, we're finally going to get to our form input. So we're going to have form input equals ttk.entry. master equals form field container, which we created right up here, and text equals label. Sorry, no, there's no text there. Text variable equals variable, which we specified right up here. That's going to be one of these that we input. And then just go ahead and copy this. It's going to be a line from, it's going to be a line on the left, but it's going to be right after our first element. So we'll say padx equals 5, fill equals x, and then expand equals yes, allowing us to expand the window a little bit for it to fit. We'll say form input right there as well. Cool. Okay, and the last thing we want to do, and this is where we have a slight departure from our usual order of business, is we're going to say add regx validation. That's going to be to form input. So we're going to type in form input right there. And then we're going to put in a regular expression, which I'm going to copy and paste from the demo. Basically what this allows us to do is this means that you can only enter letters and numbers into any of the inputs that we create using this function. And that's where we get this little nice little red thing when we don't do our job. And then I'm just going to return the form input. So I created form entry. Let's go ahead and use that to create these using our string variables and our double variable. We can do self.create form entry. We're going to put in our label. So we're going to say name for the first one, then self.name, referring to our variable where the data is going to be stored. Let's copy that. And we've got right here student ID. Self.studentID, corresponding to this one right up here. Self.course name, and self.final score, although this one's going to be a little bit more complicated. We're actually going to be returning this to another variable called self.finalScoreInput. And the reason we're going to be doing that is because we're going to want to take this, or the value from the input, which we're returning. We're returning this form input. So we're going to want whatever is put in this meter to correspond to this input. So in order for us to be able to alter that, when we create the form entry, we create the entry widget, we're going to have to send that object and store it in this variable right here. And now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead to creating our meter and then creating our button box. So meter is actually a TTK Bootstrap specific widget. It's pretty awesome. So that's referring to this right here. It's very interactive. So let's go ahead and create that. We're going to say meter equals ttk dot meter, and then we're going to say master equals self. That's this is just referring to the main window, the window in which the meter resides. We're going to say meter size equals 150 for basically like the radius of the meter. Padding equals 5. So just 5 pixels all around it. Amount total equals 100. So that means that this meter can have a maximum of 100 before it starts over again. Amount used equals 50, which means when we start the application, the meter is set at 50. Meter type equals full. So this one right here is actually a full circle, this meter. You can also have a half circle, and then that would just be semi. That's got to be a string. And then we can have subtext equals final score. And interactive equals true. So interactive equals true means that we can actually just use our mouse to change the value. And this one was the subtext right here where it says final score. We're going to do meter.pack. And then we're going to do set or self.finalscore dot set meter dot amount used var. So this meter dot amount used var is referring to the current value in this meter right here. And we're setting this final score that we specified right here, this double variable, to whatever the value is in the meter. And also, we're going to do self.finalscoreinput.configure text variable equals meter dot amount used var. So this is actually just setting the value of the variable that corresponds to this final score input. And this is changing the value in the input form itself. So as we move this changes as well. So this basically links this meter to our final score input right here, to this field right here. And then that's pretty much it. Okay, so now we're going to create the button box, which is what we have right here, and then the onSubmit function and onCancel function. So button box is it's pretty simple. It's very Tkinter-esque. So we're going to create a new frame for the button. We're just going to say button container equals ttk.frame self. And we're going to pack that. We're going to say .pack fill equals x, expand equals yes, and pad y equals 15, 10. And then we're going to create our cancel button. So we'll say cancel button equals ttk.button, master equals button container, which is this one right here. Text equals cancel, command equals self.onCancel, which we have created, but we haven't written the body for. Boot style equals danger. That is a ttkbootstrap attribute, and that makes it red like this. And width equals 6. And we're going to say cancel button. This is going to be right aligned, so we'll say side equals right, pad x equals 5. And then we're going to create our submit button. I'm just going to copy this because I'm lazy. Say submit button. The text is going to be submit for this one. So this is going to correspond to the onSubmit function. Instead of danger, we're going to have success right here. Remember, these are all constants that correspond to this import statement right up here. Yeah, we can do that. And then we're going to, we'll need to do cancel button.pack, actually, not just cancel button. Do the same thing right here. Submit button.pack. And this is pretty straightforward. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and create the onSubmit function. The onCancel function is trivial. We'll create that afterwards as well. So with the onSubmit function, what we want to do is we want to get the values of all 4 of these variables, because these correspond to these 4 fields right here. Basically, we want to get those, we want to store those in the data array so that they can be displayed in our table later on. So what we're going to do right here, we've got onSubmit. We're going to do name equals self.name.get. It's corresponding to this one right up here. And just copy that times 4 times. Got one for student ID. Self.student underscore ID.get. Got one for course name. self.coursename.get final score, self.finalscore.get. Cool. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to give them that nice little toast notification, which let's say we put something in here, and something in here. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to submit that. And we see this is our toast notification. This actually looks better on a real computer, but it just still tells the user that their value has been submitted. So we'll say toast equals toast notification. This is another TTK Bootstrap feature. Title equals submission successful. Message equals your data has been successfully submitted. Duration equals 3000. That means that that message is only going to appear for 3000 milliseconds or 3000 seconds. This toast notification comes from our import statement right here. Next, we're just going to do toast.showToast, which will actually show this toast notification. And finally, we're going to do self.data.append. And in our data array, which we initialized right here in our initializer function, we're going to put in a tuple with the name, student ID, the course name, and the final score. And that is basically it. We will add some stuff for the table once we get to that part. But for on cancel, we're just going to do self.quit. Okay, I think we are actually ready to try this out, unless I'm mistaken. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to minimize this right there. And we're going to try to run this application. I'm going to close this. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. All right, so right here, we've already got an issue. Okay, example 2, let's see, line 113. Let's go all the way down here. So it's going to be in Gradebook, line 22. Okay, so right here, self.create form entry. Let's see, line 31. Oh, expand should not be X right here. Expand should be yes. Cool. Let's give that another try. Okay. I've got our application right here, which is organized in a very strange way, and there is no buttons. So I think we left out a few things. So first of all, we're going to have to put right here in our initializer function, in our init function, we're going to have to put self.createMeter to create our meter, and then self.createButtonBox to create our button box. That I forgot about. There's no point in writing these functions down here if you're not going to execute them. So we've got that. There's something wrong with our formatting, so we'll fix that later. Okay, so that looks fine, but this is still pretty weird right here. So let's see what's up with this. So basically what we want to do is we want to go to self.createFormEntry and make sure that all of these look the way that they're supposed to look. So we've got fill equals x, expand equals yes, and pad y equals 5. We've got side equals left, pad x equals 12. We've got side equals left, pad x equals 5. Okay, what we left out here is that the master window should not be self. Rather, it should be master equals form field container, because it should all be in this form field container. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's try running this again. Okay, that looks better. And this works as it's supposed to. I will type in a myth. Let's type in something like that, which we see a red mark. It doesn't actually stop us from submitting, but it is if we can see whether it's correct or not. So we'll do that. And then course name, calculus, let's say. We'll do submit. Okay, so we've got an issue right here, expected floating point number, but got pi var 4. Okay. and that's on 92. So let's go over here. So I think it would have worked, but we just want to go ahead and make sure that there's no errors at all. So we're going to go to line 92 and see what's up. So basically what it's saying right here is it got a string, pi_var4, when it should have gotten a floating point number. What we're going to try to do is just change this to final score input to get the value straight from the input rather than getting it from the form field that we created. So let's do that. Say, okay, yeah, we're not supposed to have any symbols. Let's stick to text. Submit. Okay, and I think that works because we didn't get an error message. So yeah, basically the problem was final score was a string instead of a double variable. And so instead of getting the value from the entry widget we created, I'm just getting it from, or instead of getting it from the variable itself, I'm getting it from the entry widget. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's write the code for the table and then execute it in REPL IT right here. Also, if you noticed in Mac, for some reason, it doesn't show the toast notification. But if you run it on a Windows PC, it does, or even on a Linux machine. Now, Mac and Tkinter have always had a really weird relationship, and I think that's probably part of the reason why it doesn't work as well as it should. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a table. And this is the table that we're going to create. It's going to be searchable, it's going to be paginated, and it's going to be sortable. And this is really cool because it's substantially easier to do this using ttkbootstrap than in just regular Tkinter. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, so first of all, we want to create the columns. So these columns right here. So we're going to say call data equals text name. So we're going to create a structure like so, text student ID. Text course name and text final score stretch equals false. So what this basically does is this creates, so we have name, student ID, course name, and final score, which correspond to our 4 columns right here. And we also set stretch false because we don't want those to stretch out if there's a larger value. And that's because student ID is probably, in reality, a student ID wouldn't be more than a fixed number of digits. And then the final score should only be a number between 0 and 100. So this is allowing us to create the names of the columns that will appear in our table, as well as give them some attributes. Now, next what we're going to do is actually create the table object. We're going to say table equals Tableview, master equals self, referring to the frame that holds everything. Call data equals this right here. Row data, which row data is going to be each of these rows. So the data that's actually going to be displayed in the table. And that is going to be the array that we created right up here, and which we populated when we hit the onSubmit function, or the submit button. And that data array is just going to be a series of tuples. Each tuple will have a name, student ID, course name, and final score, and will so represent a row. So going back to our table function, we're going to have row data equals self.data, paginated equals true, which refers to this right here. This is pagination. Searchable equals true, which refers to this search bar. If we search 28, for example, 0.0, then we can just see that one right there. It'll search all the text. Boot style equals primary. That's just, you can change that. That's just kind of setting the color scheme. Stripe color, again, self.colors.light, none. Let's submit that again. Yeah, so my understanding is that we just have just a light color for the background when we're selecting. Actually, when they're unselected, we have some sort of alternating like light and dark colors. Again, if you want more details on the appearance stuff, you can look that up in the documentation, which is extensive. So we've got that. And then we're going to do table.pack, fill equals both, expand equals yes, pad x equals 10, give it some padding on all sides, pad y equals 10 as well. And we're just going to return table. So we're creating this table object and then we're returning it. And what is important about that is we're going to go back up here to our initializer function. And when this object is created, when it's initialized, we're going to create the table. We're going to say self.table equals self.createTable. And this variable is going to hold our table element. So we can add stuff to it and we can manipulate it. So we're doing that as soon as you create the application. Then also when we submit our data, we're going to do self.table.destroy. So we're actually destroying the table. And then we're creating it again. So we're going to destroy the table. And then we're going to create it again with self.table equals self.createTable. Thereby creating a new table and assigning it to our table variable, which we first created right up here. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and run this in a REPL IT just to make sure that everything we did here was correct and troubleshoot any issues. Again, normally I wouldn't do this, but just because of compatibility issues, it's just better to do this. Let's go ahead and run. All right, cool. So I'm going to submit. I'm going to say a myth, student ID is whatever, some number, course name is calculus, final score is that, and then submit. And I've got my toast notification down here now. And you can see the data. Let me just submit it again just so I have more data. So that destroyed the table and refreshed it. And let's just say John. Let's type that in. And we'll say physics. Submit that. And right now what we can do is we can just type in John. We can search for that. And right here we have the main entry for John right here. So that's how you create a basic application using Tkinter and Bootstrap. A lot of the syntax was very similar to Tkinter, but as you can see, we have some new elements like this meter and the table view, which is very easy to create with ttkbootstrap. And then additionally, we just have, just everything just looks better, right? Also, some of this, like we have different keywords like boot style. I think those are really what the main differences are. Validation as well, which we didn't go too much into. There's further types of validation, more restrictive validation that you can do using ttkbootstrap, but that was another element that's a lot easier to do in this library than in just vanilla Tkinter. Anyways, I hope that you found that useful. I will be putting another tutorial out that focuses specifically on this table, more with the appearance of the table and just giving more specifics on how you can just create a table using ttkbootstrap. Again, it's important to mention that you don't actually, you can just write a regular Tkinter application using ttkbootstrap and it will all look better because it will take on the visual styling of Bootstrap. Anyways, if you found this to be of value and would like to see more videos like it, please remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Have a nice day.